All right, you guys have made it to our soft body physics final project. Now, this is going to be a really fun one because soft body physics are a lot of fun to mess around with. So check out this quick simulation I just made before I started this recording. We have a couple of icospheres falling down the stairs, and if you look really close, they bounce off the stairs and they have this sort of kind of jelly feature to them. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and take a little screenshot so I make sure I get these physics settings exactly right for you guys. We're going to be adding both a collision and soft body physics to our simulation, and we're actually going to render out some materials as well. So this is going to be a pretty fun project. Very first thing I'm going to do is have you guys know that these settings on the right are the ideal settings. So I'll try to leave these up on the screen at some point for you when we add everything back to our scene. I'm going to go ahead and keep one of these icospheres around for our project, and I'm going to delete this little staircase I made. I'm actually going to go ahead and delete these other two, and we're going to keep this one as a backup. Now, to get this onto the screen, all I did was I went to Add, Mesh, Icosphere. Now, you guys can add any object you want rolling down your staircase, but what we're going to do is we're basically going to make a project where we have a bunch of icospheres that go down a staircase and get collected into some sort of bucket or something like that. Well, let's see what we can do. All right, the very first thing I'm going to do is make some kind of a staircase. So I'm just going to add in a cube here. I'm going to scale it on the x-axis, scale it down a little bit, and I want our stairs to be a little bit bigger so that our objects can actually roll down them. Now I'll go to our modifiers tab. I'm going to create an array modifier, and I'm going to choose 1 for our y, or I'll do like -1, something like that. Now I also need to make sure that it's offset on the z-axis as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my side view until I feel like I have it just about perfect. We'll do -1 and 1. -1 and -1. Perfect. All right, so that's going to be the start of our staircase. Now, however many stairs we need is up to us. I'll go ahead and add 10. I think that's perfect. And we're going to go ahead and utilize that so that once everything rolls down, we'll collect it in some sort of bucket. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Apply. So I'm going to apply my modifier. And then I'm simply going to add a collision physics to this staircase. Now, again, you can easily make your staircase wider if you need to. Maybe I'll make it a little bit wider. This looks pretty good. The next thing we're going to do is make sure we have the correct settings on our physics object. And we're also going to make sure our object is placed in a way where when it falls, it actually falls down the staircase. So right now, I already know that I added a soft body physics type to my object. And if we scroll down, make sure that goal is unchecked, edges is checked, stiffness, we're going to put that at about 0.5 or so. And then for push and pull, we're going to keep those at 0.5. Dampness, we'll keep that at about 0.2. And then bending, this is where you get to be kind of creative. I kept it at 0.5. Again, you guys feel free to do whatever you want with this. Gravity is set normally in our scene. And if we press play, you can see that our ball rolls down like that. Now, there's a lot of cool things we can do with this because we already have this one ball. So we can add as many as we want, right? I can just Shift D to duplicate. And when I press play, you can see they all fall down. Now we may have to bake this out when we start collecting our objects because we may have quite a lot of objects at the end. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to click this little arrow up here and I'm going to click on random so we can easily differentiate between everything. Now we need a way to collect all of these different objects. So I think I'm going to make some kind of a container at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Add, Mesh, Cube, and then I'm going to move my cube down here somewhere. I'm going to go ahead and tab into edit mode. I'm going to select my top face, X to delete, and I'm just going to select face. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some solidity to this, similar to our last final project. We're basically just making some sort of box or some sort of container. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Add Modifier. I'm going to add a Solidify modifier, and then I'll just choose any thickness I want. I think that's perfect. Now, let me go ahead and go to my top-down view, scale this out a bit until it's about the same size as the staircase. I'm going to go ahead and bring it down. I think I'm going to scale it up. And I think that looks pretty good. Now you guys can make this whatever size you want. I just want to make sure it's more or less lined up. I'm also going to turn on my cavity feature here so that I can easily see the edges right here of my objects. I think this looks a lot easier to see. That looks good. I'm going to go ahead and apply this. I'm going to go to Object, Apply, All Transforms. Sometimes that helps because it can mess with the physics simulation. Usually it doesn't. Now I'm going to go to my physics tab and I'm going to add a collision. Now, if we press play, these should collide with the inside of the box. Now let's make sure and verify before we start getting into materials and lighting and other things like that. And they do. Now, they do collide in kind of a weird way. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to adjust the surface thickness of our collision because I think it's messing up with the collisions of our objects here. So I'm going to go back to frame 1. I'm going to open up our collision settings for our container. And then for the surface outer, I'm going to set that to 0.1. Now I'm going to play this back and let's see if we get the same issue as we did last time. And we are good to go. We do not get the same issue as before. Now there is one thing I want to do. I actually want to make this slightly less hollow. I'm going to bring this floor up a little bit. Maybe something like that. I think that looks fine. And if you really need to, you can bring this up as well. I just think it's going to look a little bit better, especially when we set up our render. We want to make sure we can see everything very nicely. Now this looks really cool. Let's play it back one more time, make sure everything's working physics-wise. Then we're going to add in some materials, some lighting, and we're going to set up a really cool render. All right, this looks great. Everything's working exactly the way that I want it to. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how to set up a fun little scene here. I'm going to go ahead and add in a plane to our scene. I'm going to scale that plane way up, and I'm going to bring it right underneath of everything else. Now this is going to be kind of our surface here. Now I'm going to switch over to rendered view. So I'm going to go ahead and click this little button up here. Now we're in rendered view, and you can't really see anything. You can see a little bit, but there's really not much lighting on our world. So I'm going to go ahead to my world settings over here, and I'm going to select an HDRI that I downloaded from polyhaven.com, and I'll make sure to link that in the description. I'm going to open up my environment textures, and I'm going to go ahead into my Blender folder, find my HDRI folder, and then I have a selection of HDRIs I can choose from for my scene lighting. Now, one of the HDRIs I really like going with is this one right here. I just think it's a good one for overall lighting for the scene. Let's go ahead and choose that, and now we have some lighting on our scene. I think this angle looks pretty cool too. Now we can start setting up some basic materials and our camera shot. So what I think I'm going to do next is I'm just going to click on my background plane right here. I'm just going to add a new material under our materials slot over here. And I think I'll just make this a darker material right here. I think that looks good. Now for this base right here, I think I'll make this sort of an off gray. So I'll select a new material. We'll just go with the default material, and I'll make this a slight gray material here. That looks pretty good. And then as for our staircase, I think I want those to be maybe metallic, make them look kind of interesting. So I'm going to click on new material. I'll raise the metallic value, and I'll lower the roughness a little bit so they're kind of nice and shiny. Now if we press play, you can see that our spheres roll down. Now it's a little glitchy because right now we're in rendered view and nothing's really rendered out, but you can see that the spheres look really cool. I actually want to make the spheres a little bit bigger, and I want to make them a different color. So first of all, let's go ahead and select all of them. Let's make them a little bit bigger here. Let's put them in a little bit closer to each other. That looks good. And let's go ahead and play this back, make sure they all roll down properly. Looks like a few fell off, but that's okay. What I want to do is get a good idea for the visual we're going to have here. Now back in rendered view, I want to go ahead and take a look at these spheres. Let's go ahead and click on one. Let's add a new material. Instead of our principal BSDF, which is the default material in Blender, I'm going to go ahead and click on this drop down, and I'm going to choose glass. I'm also going to raise the roughness of our staircase just a little bit so we can easily see what we're working on here. I'm going to lower the light on that as well. Now this glass looks really cool because it looks frosted, and I think that's awesome. I'm going to go ahead and change this to maybe like sort of a blue color, like almost like a blue jelly. And I'm going to go ahead and choose this one here, and I'm going to give it that same blue color. And I'm going to give this one the same blue color. But this time, I'm going to click this little duplicate button here. I don't know if you can see that, right next to the X. And I'm actually just going to give this a slight orange tint. Can you see the theme I'm going for here? I'm going through for like a blue and orange Blender theme. I'm going to go ahead and make this one orange. And then what we'll eventually do is duplicate these again so we have a lot more jelly spheres to work with. Now let's go ahead and play this back and see how this looks. Very cool. We have a few spheres that are yet uncolored, but how cool does that look? It's cool. I love watching the moment they bounce and they swish down like that. It looks really cool. Now, how can we turn this into kind of a really cool looking render? Well, we're going to need more spheres, but we're also going to need a camera. So I'm going to go back to our solid view. I'm going to go to add camera. All right. And then you might not see your camera right away. It usually spawns in the center. I'm going to move it out over here. Now to snap to my camera, I can just click this little button right here. And then I can just press G to move my camera view. And I think I'll slide myself back on the X-axis and the Y, and I'll move myself into a position that looks good. All right, this is looking good so far. I'm also going to switch my camera mode from perspective to orthographic. Now that we're in our orthographic mode, we get a completely different quote-unquote perspective, although it's not perspective anymore. In fact, it's orthographic. I'm also going to rotate my camera down a little bit, and I'm going to make sure I'm zoomed out enough on my orthographic scale. I think this looks good. Let's go ahead and see what this looks like in rendered view. This looks really cool. Now, one of the coolest things about Blender is that we can enable depth of field on our camera, and I'm going to do that on this camera right here. I'm going to go ahead and check mark this depth of field. If you don't see it, make sure you open it up like this. Check mark that depth of field, and you'll already see we have this blurry effect. And now we're going to use our eyedropper tool, and we're going to select whatever we want to focus on. I think I'll choose this bottom platform right here, and then I'll lower my f-stop to something like 1, and we're going to get this really cool blurred out effect. I just think this looks so cool. Now, we can do really whatever we want here. We don't have to use this specific blurred out effect, but I think it looks awesome. I'm also going to change the color of my staircase to that gray color I have for the bottom. I want to give everything a consistent look. And there's one more thing I think I might do. I might add some glass panels on either side to give ourselves more of an experimental type of look. And to do this, I'm going to go back to solid view. I'm going to go ahead and click on add, mesh, plane. And I'm just going to scale this up a little bit, RY90 to rotate it on the Y axis. I'm going to start to move it into place. I'll go to my side view. I'll start to line this up the way that I think looks good. And this is starting to look really good. Let's go ahead and see what this looks like in rendered view. All right, cool. It looks pretty nice. I'm also going to scale it on the Z axis. I'm going to move it down. Now, you don't have to do this in rendered view. You can do all of this modeling in solid view, but I'm going to try to get a feel for what this might look like if this piece was made of glass. I'll give it a new material. I'll go ahead and switch this to glass. And this is looking pretty cool. It does. It looks kind of like an experiment. I'm going to go ahead and make sure everything's lining up the way that I want it to. I'm going to scale this down a little bit more. I'm going to try to line this up exactly with each edge. That looks pretty good. And I'm also going to add a modifier to this. I'm going to add a solidify modifier. That'll give our glass some actual real thickness here. It'll give it a more believable look. And I'm going to scale it on the y-axis. I'm going to try to meet it up just with this edge here. And let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. And this looks really, really cool. Now, if we wanted to, we could add a mirror modifier. Now remember, this is just visual. This isn't really going to affect our physics unless we give it a collision, which we could. I'm going to add one more modifier. I'm going to go to generate. I'm going to click on mirror. And then I'm going to use this eyedropper tool to select this center cube here. And as you can see, it duplicated our glass plane onto the other side. Now, we're not going to be able to really see through it unless we lower this roughness. So I could do that right now if I wanted to. Now, if you don't like this look, that's totally okay. You don't have to use this look. I just thought this looked really cool. And yeah, I thought this looked nice. So what I also want to do is I want to make sure that this is perfectly centered, which it looks like it's not. So I'm going to set the origin to geometry. And I just do that by right-clicking, set origin to geometry. And notice how it fixes our mirrored property here. And this looks really cool, actually. And I don't know if you guys can tell from this shot, but I really think this is looking nice. Now I'm going to go up here to my render properties, and I'm going to enable the denoiser for our viewport, so it's a little bit easier for us to see. This is starting to look like a really cool render. Now, one of the things we're going to need to do is we're going to need to make sure we have a lot more spheres to work with, and we're going to need to bake out our animation. So I'm going to go back to my solid view. I'm going to go all the way back to frame 1. I'm going to select all of these. I'm going to scale them up quite a bit. Now, I'm going to start duplicating them. But before I do that, I want to click on my staircase. I want to click on my back face. Now, I'm in edit mode right now, and I just want to click on E to extrude this out. All right, and then I'm going to press G, Z to make sure that it goes up like that. And now we have this nice angled floor so that we can drop our spheres from above. Now, remember, this may not work every single time, but let's go ahead and play it back and see how it looks. Good. Now it's catching some of those other external spheres, but we need to make sure they don't fall off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply my modifiers to this by right-clicking on my walls. I'm going to go to convert to mesh, and then I'm going to go ahead and just add a collision within our physics properties. That way, our spheres can't fall outside of these glass walls. Let's see if that worked. And it looks like they are now colliding with the wall. But remember from before, we need to adjust our surface thickness because we're running into some issues. So our thickness outer, I'll set that to 0.1. Actually, I'll set it to 0.2, and let's see what we get. Now, this one will probably still be able to roll over. It got caught a little bit. Now, that's one thing that can happen. I'm actually glad this happened because I wanted to mention this. This can happen sometimes. You might get objects that get caught on the edges. It's completely normal. Now, our next step is probably going to be to duplicate a bunch of these and make sure that some of them are a little bit more centered. Now again, if we're having more issues, we can simply click on our glass and we can raise it up. Or we can go ahead and pull it back into the scene. Totally up to us how we want to handle these collisions. Regardless, I'm going to go ahead and select our spheres by clicking and dragging around them, and I'm going to duplicate them a couple times. And then I kind of want to see what this is going to look like. So in order to properly see this, I'm going to go over to my scene properties, my rigid body world. I'm going to click on add rigid body world, my cache, and I'm going to click bake. And as you can see, it's baking out our simulation right now. Now let's go ahead and see what happens with this. It's almost done. And we should be able to play this back in almost real time. This is looking good. We're going to have one piece get caught again, but look at all of those different spheres that are falling down. This looks fantastic. And what's awesome is if we really wanted to, we could add a subdivision modifier to each one of these spheres as well. And that is more or less pretty much it, guys. Another thing I like to do, I'll just add this quick pro tip in there. If you click on the camera, you can actually go to your camera settings down here, and you can open up this viewport display option. And there's an option called pass part out, which is basically this external area around the camera. So it's whatever the camera can't see. I usually like to turn this value up, so it really narrows in on our scene more. And we know exactly what the camera is actually seeing. I think this looks fantastic. And if you turn our overlays off up here, we won't see that grid anymore, and we'll see an accurate reflection of what this is actually going to look like. I think this looks great. I'm really happy with how this turned out. The only other thing is we have to make sure this piece doesn't get caught on the edge. In order to do that, I'll just simply click on that piece, and I'm going to delete it. And we go back, and we play this back. Everything looks fantastic. Guys, that is pretty much it for your final project. I encourage you to make this your own. Use your own colors, use your own obstacles, use a glass boundary or don't. You can use Eevee, you can use cycles, whatever you want. Have fun with it, play with the settings. Let me know what you guys come up with. You have your final challenge project. Let me know how you do, and give me any comments that you have or questions about it. You may run into a few issues, but it's okay. We're going to get through it together. Good luck, record your screen, and have fun. In the next lesson, we'll move on to cloth physics, where we'll learn how to create realistic cloth simulations in Blender 3D. We'll see you there.